Picture this. A knock echoes through your quiet home on a stormy night, and standing there is the brother you mourned for 2 decades alive, unchanged, with a smile that hides dark secrets. But as joy turns to dread, you realize his return might unravel your life, bringing betrayal from the past that could endanger everything you love. My name is Thomas Reed, a 55-year-old accountant living in the sleepy town of Evergreen, Oregon. I've spent years building a stable life after unimaginable loss, but nothing prepared me for this. If this story touches your soul, subscribe to this channel because every day there's a new story that could be yours. Tell us in the comment at what time you are listening this story. It was just last night, the kind of evening where the wind howls, like forgotten regrets, rattling the windows of my modest 2-story house. I'd settled into my routine, a microwaved dinner, the glow of the TV casting shadows on the walls adorned with faded family photos. My wife Laura was upstairs reading, our teenage son Jake, glued to his video games in his room. Life felt ordinary, a far cry from the chaos of my youth. 20 years ago, my younger brother Daniel vanished without a trace. We were close best friends, really. I was 35 then, he was 30, both of us working at our father's old lumber mill. One crisp autumn morning, he didn't show up for his shift. His apartment was empty, his car gone, no note, no goodbye. The police searched for weeks, questioned friends, dragged the nearby river, even suspected foul play from shady business dealings at the mill. But nothing. Daniel was declared missing, presumed lost to some accident, or worse. Our parents never recovered. Mom passed from a broken heart 2 years later. Dad followed soon after, so I was left to pick up the pieces, inheriting the family home and the weight of unanswered questions. Over the years, I'd convinced myself he was gone for good. Maybe he ran off to start over, escaping the small-town drudgery. Or perhaps something sinister claimed him. The thought haunted my dreams. I married Laura, had Jake, and tried to move on. But deep down, the pain lingered. A quiet ache that surfaced on anniversaries, or when I saw someone who looked like him in a crowd. Last night shattered that fragile peace. The clock struck 10 p.m. when the doorbell rang sharp, insistent. I grumbled, assuming it was a neighbor or a late delivery. Peering through the peephole, my heart seized. There he was, Daniel, looking exactly as he did 2 decades ago. Same tousled brown hair, same lopsided grin, even wearing a jacket I recognized from our last fishing trip. No wrinkles, no gray impossible. I flung the door open, the rain soaking us both. Daniel, is it really you? He stepped inside, shaking off the water like a dog. Hey, big bro. Long time no see. Miss me? His voice and changed sent chills down my spine. I pulled him into a hug, tears streaming, but he felt ... off. Too calm, too casual. Laura came down the stairs, her eyes widening in shock. Thomas, who's this? It's Daniel, I whispered, my voice breaking. Jake peeked from the hallway, confused. We sat in the living room, the fire crackling uneasily. Daniel spun a vague tale. He'd been traveling, finding himself abroad, lost touch. No details, no apologies. He dodged questions about where he'd been, why no contact. Life got complicated, he said with a shrug. Sadness overwhelmed me, years of grief, now mixed with confusion. Why now? As the night wore on, he asked about the family estate, our parents' will. Subtle, but probing. Laura shot me worried glances. Jake seemed fascinated but uneasy. Then, as he excused himself to the bathroom, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen of text from an unknown number. Stick to the plan. Get the documents tonight. My stomach dropped. Who was he really? And what plan? He looked 35. Exactly 35. Not a single gray hair, not a new scar, not even the tiny crow's feet I remembered starting to form the year he disappeared. I'm 55, Thomas Reed, and I suddenly felt every one of those 20 missing years carved into my face while the man on my couch looked like he'd stepped out of an old photograph. I stood frozen in the hallway, heart hammering against my ribs, staring at the glowing phone screen. Stick to the plan. Get the documents tonight. Daniel was still in the bathroom. Water ran. Too long. Laura whispered from the stairs. Tom, are you okay? You're white as a sheet. I couldn't answer. My mouth had gone dry. Jake hovered behind her, wide-eyed, sensing the shift in the air like animals feel an earthquake coming. Daniel stepped out, drying his hands on a towel that used to be Mom's. He smiled that same crooked smile, but now it felt rehearsed, like an actor hitting his mark. Everything all right, Tommy? He only called me Tommy when he wanted something as kids. I forced my voice steady. Whose phone is texting you about documents at 11 at night? His eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me, too fast, too smooth. Old work contact. Nothing exciting. You know how it is. People never let go. But I did know how it was. 20 years of silence, and the first night he walks back into my life, someone is reminding him to get the documents. Our parents' house, the land behind the old mill, the trust Dad set up, it wasn't a fortune. But to the right buyer it was $500,000 easy. I'd never touched it. I couldn't. It felt like spending Daniel's grave. Laura broke the silence. It's late. Maybe we should all get some rest and talk in the morning. Smart woman. She was giving me an out, a way to get him out of the living room and away from whatever game this was. Daniel nodded like the perfect guest. Of course. I don't want to impose. Just needed to see my big brother again. He stood, stretched, and for a second the hallway light caught something metallic under his jacket, a flash, gone before I could be sure. I offered the guest room upstairs, the one with the creaky floorboard by the door. If he moved in the night, I'd hear him. After we said awkward goodnights, Laura and I locked our bedroom door, an old habit from when Jake was little and sleepwalked. She gripped my arm in the dark. Tom, that's not your brother. I'm scared. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that blood doesn't lie, but the words stuck. Because deep down, a cold voice whispered she might be right. I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. At 2:17 a.m. I heard it, the unmistakable squeak of the third stair. Someone was going downstairs. I slipped out of bed, grabbed the old baseball bat from the closet, not to hurt anyone, just insurance, and eased the door open. Moonlight spilled through the landing window, painting the hallway silver. The guest room door hung open, empty. Downstairs, a faint glow came from Dad's old study, the one room I kept locked since the estate lawyer handed me the only key. The door stood ajar now. A shadow moved inside. I crept closer, pulse roaring in my ears, and peered through the crack. Denuif, that was still his name, knelt in front of the safe, fingers dancing over the dial like he'd done it 1,000 times. The safe I hadn't opened in 15 years. The safe that held the original land deeds, the trust papers, and something else I'd buried so deep I almost forgot it existed. He whispered to himself, voice low and urgent. Come on, Tommy still uses her birthday. It has to be Mom's birthday. He was right. The combination was Mom's birthday. The safe clicked open. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket loud in the silence. Daniel's head snapped up. His eyes met mine through the gap in the door, and for the first time, the mask slipped. He didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "Found you," he said softly. Then the lights in the study went out, and everything went black. The darkness is only the beginning. What's really inside that safe, and why does this man know my life better than I do? The lights snapped back on, harsh and sudden, like a slap. I stood in the doorway, baseball bat half raised, breathing like I'd run a mile. He didn't flinch. He just sat back on his heels, in front of the open safe, the metal door yawning wide, papers scattered across the carpet like fallen leaves. "Close the door, Tommy," he said quietly. "We don't want to wake Laura and the boy." Hearing him say their names, so casual, so familiar, made my skin crawl. I didn't move. He reached into the safe and pulled out a thick manila envelope I hadn't seen in 20 years. My stomach lurched. I knew exactly what was inside. "You kept it," he whispered, almost reverent. "After all this time, you actually kept it." I found my voice. "Get away from that." He ignored me, sliding a photograph out of the envelope. Even from 10 feet away, I recognized it. Daniel and me, arms slung around each other, grinning in front of the mill the summer before he disappeared. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, "My boys, forever." He turned the photo over and stared at the writing. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or the memory of pain. Then it was gone. "You were always the good one," he said. "The one who followed the rules, kept the secrets." "What are you talking about?" My voice cracked. "You left. You vanished. People thought you were dead." He looked up, and for the first time I saw exhaustion in his eyes, real, bone-deep exhaustion. Some days I wished I was. He stood slowly, holding the envelope against his chest like a shield. "There's a second envelope in there. The blue one. Take it out." I didn't want to get closer, but something in his voice, something broken, pulled me forward. I knelt, reached past him, and felt the cool paper of a blue legal envelope. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet, a death certificate. Name, Daniel James Reed. Date of death, October 14th, 2005. Cause, undetermined. Signed by a coroner I'd never heard of in a county 3 states away. I stared at it until the letters blurred. This is fake." "Is it?" He gave a tired smile. "Look at the seal. Look at the signature." I did. It looked real. Official. Terrifying. "Then who are you?" I whispered. He exhaled, long and slow, like he'd been holding that breath for 20 years. "I'm the mistake they tried to bury. And tonight, Tommy, the mistake came home." Footsteps on the stairs, soft, hesitant. Laura's voice, small and scared. "Thomas, what's going on?" This stranger wearing my brother's face, closed his eyes like the sound of her voice hurt him.
"Tell her to go back to bed, please."
Something she shouldn't see. I turned and saw Laura at the foot of the stairs in her robe, Jake right behind her, both pale in the hallway light. The stranger looked at my son, really looked, and his face crumpled for just a second. "He looks like you did at that age," he said so quietly I almost missed it. Then he straightened, the mask sliding back into place. "We need to talk, big brother. Just us. Because tomorrow morning, people are coming for what's in this envelope. And if they don't get it, they'll take Jake instead." The room tilted. Fear, cold and sharp, stabbed straight through my chest. He slipped the death certificate back into the blue envelope and tucked it inside his jacket. "Lock the safe. Hide the combination. And whatever you do, don't call the police. Not yet. He walked past me, past Laura and Jake, who stood frozen, and paused at the front door. Rain still lashed the windows. "Tomorrow," he said without turning around, "I'll tell you why I had to die, and why I'm sorry I ever came back." The door clicked shut behind him. Laura ran to me, clutching my arm. "Tom, who was that man?" I stared at the empty doorway, the echo of his last words ringing in my ears. "I don't know anymore," I said. "But he just threatened my son." And somewhere outside, footsteps faded into the storm. "He's gone, for now, but he left a death certificate with my brother's name on it, and a warning that chilled me to the bone. What really happened 20 years ago?" He vanished into the rain again, just like 20 years ago, but this time he left the front door unlocked and my entire world cracked wide open. Laura was shaking so hard I had to guide her to the couch. Jake kept asking, "Dad, was that really Uncle Daniel? Why did he say someone's coming for me?" I had no answers, only the taste of fear in my mouth. I sent them both upstairs, double-checked every lock, and then did something I hadn't done since the night he first disappeared. I opened the bottom drawer of Dad's old roll-top desk, taped to the underside, exactly where I'd hidden it 2 decades ago, was a letter addressed to me in Daniel's handwriting. He had given it to me the morning before he vanished, with one instruction: only open it if I don't come home for dinner. I had never opened it. I couldn't bear to. Until tonight. My fingers shook as I broke the yellowed seal. "Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Don't look for me. Don't trust anyone who says they're helping. I took something that doesn't belong to me, something a lot of powerful people want back. They'll come to the house. They'll ask about a ledger. There is no ledger. Burn this letter after you read it. Tell Mom and Dad I love them. Tell them I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm doing this so they never touch you or the family. Live a quiet life, big brother. Forget me. Love, Daniel." At the bottom, in smaller, hurried script, he had added one more line, almost scratched into the paper. "If I ever come back, don't let me in." I stared at those last 8 words until they burned behind my eyes. The man who had just stood in my study, who looked at my son with tears in his eyes, was the same man who begged me never to let him cross this threshold again. Laura found me on the floor at dawn, the letter clutched to my chest. I showed it to her. She read it twice, then folded it with trembling hands. "Tom," she whispered, "he warned you not to let him in. And you did." I felt sick. Said, "They'll take Jake if we don't give them whatever's in that envelope." "What envelope?" "The manila one." I shook my head. "No, the blue one. The death certificate. There was something else behind it. I was too scared to look last night." Together we went back to the study. The safe was still open, papers untouched. I reached into the dark back corner and felt a second blue envelope, thicker, sealed with wax. The imprint in the wax was a symbol I hadn't seen since we were kids, a tiny circled mill wheel. Dad's old company seal, the one that disappeared the same week Daniel did. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Grainy surveillance stills, men in suits, handing my brother thick envelopes outside the mill. Daniel shaking hands with a man whose face had been in the papers years ago. Marcus Langford, a developer who bought half the county after the mill shut down. And one photo that made the air leave my lungs. Daniel, pale and terrified, signing a document while Langford loomed over him. On the back of that photo, in Daniel's handwriting again, "They own me now. If anything happens to me, give these to the FBI office in Portland. Ask for Agent Sarah Caldwell. She's the only one who tried to help, Laura's hand flew to her mouth. Tom? Your brother didn't run away. He was trapped. The doorbell rang, soft, almost polite. Through the peephole I saw a woman in a dark raincoat, mid-40s, short brown hair plastered to her forehead. She held up a leather wallet with a gold badge. Mr. Reed, my name is Special Agent Sarah Caldwell, FBI. I believe you have something that belongs to a ghost. She looked up, straight into the peephole, as if she already knew I was there. And in that moment I understood. The past wasn't coming for us. It had finally caught up. A letter from a dead man, photos that could ruin powerful people. And now an FBI agent at my door at 6 a.m. Who do I trust when my own brother told me not to trust anyone? I opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. Rain hissed behind her, turning the porch light into a halo of mist. Agent Sarah Caldwell didn't try to push inside. She simply closed her wallet and waited, hands visible, like someone who had done this dance before. Thomas Reed, she said softly, 20 years ago I sat across the table from your brother and begged him to let me protect him. He refused. Last night he finally changed his mind, but only long enough to send me here. May I come in? We don't have much time. Laura appeared beside me, Jake hovering behind her. I unhooked the chain. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Daniel and I used to fight over the last pancake. Agent Caldwell placed a small recorder between us and clicked it on, then slid it aside as if it embarrassed her. I'm going to tell you the short version, she began. In 2005, your brother discovered that Langford Development was laundering money through the mill's pension fund. Millions. Daniel copied records, took photographs, the ones you found tonight. He came to me because he wanted to do the right thing, but someone tipped Langford off. She paused, eyes flicking to Jake, then back to me. Langford gave Daniel a choice: disappear quietly with a new identity, or the people he loved would start having accidents. Your parents' car on that icy road the winter after he vanished? Not ice, brake lines. I could never prove it. Danielle believed it. So he died on paper, and a terrified 30-year-old man was erased and replaced with someone who could never come home. Laura's hand found mine under the table. His goal I managed one word. Why now? Because Langford is dying, Caldwell said. Pancreatic cancer. Weeks left. He wants a clean legacy. Those photos in the ledger Daniel hid are the last loose threads. Langford's people have been watching your house for months, waiting for any sign Daniel resurfaced. Last night he walked in, and they know it. Jake made a small, scared sound. Caldwell leaned forward. Daniel texted me at 3:12 a.m. One line. Tell Tommy I'm sorry I used him as bait. He wanted me here before they arrived. He thinks if I take the evidence now, they'll leave you alone. My voice came out raw. He used us as bait. He thinks it's the only way to end this, she said gently. Give me the blue envelope, Thomas. Let me finish what we started 20 years ago. Langford's men are already in Evergreen. They'll be polite at first. Then they won't be. I stared at her badge, at the recorder, at the rain streaking the window. Every instinct screamed, trap. But the letter taped under the drawer still burned in my memory. Ask for Agent Sarah Caldwell. She's the only one who tried to help. I stood, walked to the study, and came back with the sealed blue envelope. I didn't hand it over yet. Prove you knew him, I said. Something only Daniel would have told you. She didn't hesitate. When you were 9 and he was 4, you pushed him into the river because he broke your toy plane. You jumped in after him even though you couldn't swim. He never told your parents. He said big brothers are allowed one free mistake. My knees almost gave out. Only Daniel knew that story. I placed the envelope in her hands. She slipped it into her coat. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone except me. Daniel is close. He's watching. He won't let anything happen to Jake. She was at the door when Jake spoke for the first time, voice cracking. Will I ever meet him? My real uncle? Caldwell's face softened. He wants that more than anything. But first we keep you safe. The door closed. The recorder's red light blinked once and went dark. 10 minutes later my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one text. I'm proud of the man you became. Forgive me. D. Before I could reply, another text followed. Same number. Delete that. They're tracing. I'm sorry, Tommy. Run. An FBI agent walks out with 20 years of secrets, and my brother, wherever he is, just told me to run. But run from who? The dying millionaire? Or the agent herself? Run. That single word glowed on my phone screen like a burning coal. I stared at it until the letters blurred, then deleted the thread with shaking thumbs. Laura watched me, face drained of color. Tom, we can't just sit here, she whispered. If Daniel says, run. He also sent an FBI agent to our kitchen 5 minutes ago, I cut in, voice hoarse. Which one do we believe? Jake stood in the doorway, clutching his phone, eyes wide. Dad, all the neighbors' Wi-Fi just went out. Like someone jammed a signal. A cold fist closed around my heart. The rain had stopped. The morning was unnaturally quiet. I moved to the front window and parted the curtains a fraction. Across the street, a dark SUV idled with its lights off. Another one sat at the corner. No markings, no movement, just waiting. Laura's breath hitched. They're already here. I forced my mind to work. If Caldwell was real, these were Langford's men. If Caldwell was part of the trap, we were already finished. Either way, staying meant putting Jake in the crossfire. I made the decision in one heartbeat. 10 minutes, one bag each. Cash IDs, photos, we leave through the back. We moved like people in a nightmare, stuffing backpacks, grabbing the emergency cash envelope from the freezer. Laura sliding Mom's old wedding ring onto a chain around Jake's neck for luck. I took the letter Daniel never mailed and the childhood photo from the manila envelope. Nothing else. At the kitchen door I paused. On the fridge hung a crayon drawing Jake made in 2nd grade. 3 stick figures labeled Dad, Mom, and Uncle Dan holding hands under a yellow sun. I ripped it down and stuffed it into my pocket. We slipped into the wet backyard, hearts hammering so loud I swore they could hear us. The wooden gate creaked. I froze. No reaction from the street. We cut through 3 neighbors' yards, staying low, shoes soaked with dew. At the far end of Maple Street sat my old work truck, the one I hadn't driven in months. I always kept the keys in the visor small-town habit. We piled in. I turned the key. Nothing. Dead silence. Jake whimpered. Laura's hand clamped on my arm. I looked under the steering column. The ignition wire had been neatly cut. They weren't waiting for us to leave. They were making sure we couldn't. That's when headlights swept across the cul-de-sac, slow and deliberate. A third vehicle, a silver sedan, eased to a stop behind us, blocking the only exit. The driver's window rolled down. Agent Sarah Caldwell stared straight at us, raincoat hood up, expression unreadable. She lifted one hand and made a small, urgent, circling motion. Start the engine. I didn't understand until I noticed the tiny black box clipped under my dashboard. A remote starter I'd never installed. Caldwell pressed something on her phone. The truck roared to life. She pointed left, toward the service road behind the houses, then floored her sedan forward, ramming the SUV that had started rolling toward us. Metal screamed. The SUV spun sideways. "Go," Caldwell's voice crackled through a speaker I didn't know the truck had. "Forest Service Road in 2 miles. I'll hold them." I slammed the truck into gear and punched it. In the rearview mirror I saw her car pinned between 2 SUVs, doors still closed, Caldwell inside, calm as death. Laura was crying silently. Jake clutched the door handle, knuckles white. We hit the dirt road doing 60, trees blurring past. My phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. "You weren't supposed to bring the boy. Change of plans. Head to the old mill. Come alone or Jake pays. You have 1 hour." The text ended with a photo attached. Jake's bedroom window taken from inside our house, minutes ago. A red circle drawn around his empty bed. Someone else had been inside while we packed. We escaped the street but drove straight into a new trap. Someone just used my son to force me back to the place this nightmare began 20 years ago. Who sent that photo? And why does the mill still haunt us? The old mill road was nothing but mud in memory. 20 years of neglect had turned the gravel into a swamp. The truck fishtailed, headlights carving tunnels through dripping pines. Every bump felt like a countdown. 52 minutes left. Laura kept rereading the text, lips moving silently. Jake sat between us, knees pulled to his chest, the crayon drawing I'd taken from the fridge now crumpled in his fist. "Dad," he whispered, "whoever took that picture of my room. They were inside while we were in the kitchen. They could have." His voice broke. I couldn't let myself finish that thought. I just reached over and squeezed the back of his neck, the way I used to when he had nightmares as a little kid. Laura finally spoke. "We're not leaving him alone, Tom. Whatever they want, we face it together." "No." My voice came out harder than I meant. "They said come alone or Jake pays. I won't gamble with my son." She turned to me, eyes blazing even through tears. "You're not gambling. We're ending this. Daniel started it to protect us. We finish it to protect Jake." I wanted to argue, but the mill's skeletal silhouette appeared through the trees, black against a gray sky. An argument died in my throat. I killed the headlights 100 yards out and rolled to a stop. The building looked ready to collapse. Windows shattered, the big roll-up doors hanging off their tracks, vines choking the brick. It used to smell of sawdust and coffee. Now it only smelled of rot. My phone buzzed again. Basement. Bring the childhood photo. Leave the family outside or the boy never leaves. Attached was a new picture. Jake's face, taken seconds ago through the truck's windshield, a red laser dancing on his forehead. Laura saw it the same time I did. She covered her mouth to keep from screaming. I kissed them both, hard and fast. Lock the doors. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, drive to the sheriff's office in town. Tell them everything. Show them the texts. Jake grabbed my sleeve. "Dad, please. I'm getting you out of this," I said. "That's what fathers do." Ha stepped into the cold. The childhood photo of Daniel and me clutched in my fist like a passport to hell. The side door hung open exactly as I remembered. Inside, darkness swallowed the beam of my phone flashlight. I moved past rusted machinery, past the office where Daniel and I once stole sodas from the machine, down the metal stairs that used to clang under our boots. The basement smelled of mold and old secrets. A single bulb flickered on at the far end, revealing a folding chair, a card table, and a man sitting with his back to me. He turned the chair slowly. It was Daniel. Only it wasn't. The face was right, the eyes were right, but something fundamental had been hollowed out. He looked like a photograph left too long in the sun. "You came," he said, voice flat. "Good." On the table lay a gun I recognized, Dad's old service revolver from his army days, the one that disappeared the same week Daniel did. Next to it, a single sheet of paper and a pen. Daniel, this man wearing Daniel's skin, pushed the paper toward me. "Sign it," he said. "Transfer the land, the trust, everything to the holding company listed. Do it, and Jake walks away tonight. Refuse." He tapped the gun. My throat closed. "Where's my son?" "Safe for now." He leaned forward, and for a second the real Daniel flickered behind the eyes. "Tommy, please. I never wanted it to come to this." "Then stop it," I shouted, voice echoing off concrete. "You're my brother." He flinched like I'd struck him. "Your brother died a long time ago. This is what's left when you try to outrun monsters. They don't let you quit." He stood, walked around the table, and placed the childhood photo I'd brought face up between us. In it we were laughing, arms around each other, 16 and 11, before life taught us what betrayal felt like. "Look at us," he whispered. "Remember when we thought the worst thing that could happen was Dad grounding us for a week?" His finger traced the edge of the photo, then rested on the gun. "I have a new family now, Tommy. Orders I can't refuse. Sign, or I stop being the brother you lost and start being the man they trained me to be." The bulb overhead flickered once, twice, then steadied. And in that moment I understood the real price Langford had forced him to pay. But I still had one card left. He's holding Dad's gun and begging me to sign my life away to save my son. But I just realized something that changes everything. What if the monster isn't the man in front of me, but the boy in the photograph? I stared at the childhood photo between us, the one he'd demanded I bring. 2 grinning boys in front of the mill, arms slung around each other. For 20 years I'd looked at that picture and seen me on the left, Daniel on the right. Same as always. Except tonight the light was wrong. The shadows fell differently, and the boy on the right was half an inch taller than the boy on the left. Daniel had always been shorter than me until he hit 15. My mouth went dry. "You're not Daniel." The man across the table froze. Just for a heartbeat. Then the mask cracked wide open, not into anger, but into something worse. Pity. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not?" He reached up and peeled at the edge of his hairline. A thin, latex seam appeared. Slowly, carefully, he lifted away the face I'd hugged last night, the face that had looked at Jake with tears in its eyes. Underneath was a stranger, mid-40s, scarred eyes, the color of winter steel. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said, voice suddenly deeper, rougher. "I was Daniel's handler for 16 years. The agency gave me his face after the real Daniel." He stopped, swallowed hard. After he didn't make it. The basement spun. I gripped the table to stay upright. What happened to my brother? I could barely hear my own voice. Ethan Cole looked away. He tried to run. 6 months after he faked his death. He wanted to come home, tell you everything, beg forgiveness. Langford's people caught him outside Seattle. I was ordered to clean it up. His fingers brushed the gun like it was burning him. I couldn't pull the trigger. So they did it for me. Then they gave me a choice. Where his life, finish his mission, or join him in the ground. I felt the world drop out from under me. 20 years of grief, of hope, of that single text last night, "I'm proud of the man you became," had come from this imposter. "Why tell me now?" I rasped. "Because I'm tired," he whispered. "And because someone else is coming down those stairs in about 90 seconds, and they won't hesitate like I did." He slid the gun across the table, handle toward me. Langford's real enforcer is here. The one who actually killed Daniel. He thinks I brought you here to close the file permanently. If he sees me talking like this, he'll kill us both and take Jake anyway. I stared at the revolver. What do you want from me? Make it look real, Ethan said. Shoot me in the shoulder. Take the contract. Run upstairs. Tell him I forced you to sign. He'll believe you're broken. It buys you 12 hours to get your family out of the country. Footsteps on the metal stairs. Slow, deliberate. Ethan's eyes, cold steel a moment ago, suddenly filled with tears. Daniel talked about you every single day. He said you were the only thing that ever made him believe people could be good. Don't let his son grow up like we did, Tommy. Please. The basement door creaked open above us. Ethan mouthed one word. Now. I raised the gun with both hands. My finger found the trigger. And for the first time in 20 years, I understood what my little brother had tried to protect me from. The footsteps reached the bottom step. The man who wore my brother's face just begged me to shoot him to save my son. But the real killer is standing right behind me now. One wrong move, and Jake loses 2 fathers in the same night. The footsteps stopped directly behind me. A voice I didn't recognize, low and calm, like someone ordering coffee. Cole, you're taking too long. I didn't turn around. My hands trembled on Dad's old revolver, still pointed at Ethan Cole's chest. He sat motionless, waiting for me to decide who lived. Ethan spoke without looking away from me. He sighed. It's done. Give me 30 seconds to finish the family part. A soft chuckle. Langford said no loose ends this time. You're getting soft, Cole. Step aside. I felt cold metal press gently against the base of my skull. Not rough. Almost polite. Ethan's eyes flicked up to the man behind me, and something passed between them, recognition, maybe hatred. Then Ethan did something I'll never forget. He smiled at me. A real smile. The same crooked one from the photograph. Do it, Tommy, he said clearly. Shoulder. Now. I pulled the trigger. The explosion in the small basement was deafening. Ethan spun off the chair, blood blooming dark across his left shoulder. He hit the concrete hard, gasping, but his eyes stayed on mine. Thank you. The gun was ripped from my hand. An arm hooked around my throat from behind, not choking, just holding. Good boy, the voice murmured in my ear. See? It wasn't so hard. He stepped around me, into the light. Mid-50s expensive coat, silver hair slicked back. A face I'd seen in local papers years ago when Langford Development broke ground on the new resort that buried half our county forest. Victor Langford, Marcus Langford's younger brother. The family's problem solver. Victor crouched beside Ethan, checked the wound with professional detachment. Clean through. He'll live. Shame? He looked up at me, almost kindly. Your brother, screamed. You know. When we finally caught him, begged us to let him call you one last time. We said no. The words hit harder than any fist could. I felt my knees buckle, but Victor's grip kept me upright. He picked up the signed contract, the one I'd never actually touched, and tucked it into his coat. Now, we go upstairs and collect your wife and son. Quiet family ride to the lake. Tragic carbon monoxide accident in an old truck. Very sad, very final. Ethan, bleeding on the floor, laughed, once wet, broken. Victor sighed. Something funny, Cole? Ethan lifted his head. You never checked the cylinder, Vic? Victor frowned, glanced at the revolver on the floor. 6 chambers, 1 spent. Ethan's right hand came up holding a tiny silver flash drive between bloody fingers. Daniel mailed me this the day he died, Ethan rasped. Everything. Audio of you confessing. bank records. The pension money you skimmed before Langford even knew it existed. Insurance policy. I uploaded it to a dead man's server 2 hours ago. If my heart stops, it mails itself to every major news outlet in the Pacific Northwest, and to Agent Caldwell. Victor's face changed. The polite mask melted into something feral. Ethan smiled through the pain. Touch that family, and your brother dies in prison instead of a hospital bed. Your choice. Victor stared at the drive like it was a live snake. Then, slowly, he took a step back from me. New plan, he said quietly. We all walk out together, nice and slow. Cole gets medical attention. The Reeds get to live. For now. He looked at me, eyes dead. But understand this, Thomas. The second Marcus takes his last breath, the hunt starts again. And next time, I won't be polite. He turned toward the stairs. Ethan whispered, barely audible, Don't trust the drive, Tommy. It's a bluff. Run when you hit daylight. Victor heard none of it. He was already climbing. I looked down at the man bleeding out, Tobias minutes, maybe hours, and I made a promise to both of us. This wasn't over. Victor Langford just admitted he murdered my brother. Ethan Cole is bleeding on the floor with a fake ace up his sleeve. And in 30 seconds we're all walking upstairs to face my family. One wrong move, and the fragile ceasefire ends in blood. Every step on the metal stairs sounded like a countdown. Victor Langford first, hand inside his coat. Me, behind him, empty-handed, heart hammering so hard I could taste iron. Ethan Cole lest. One arm clamped over his bleeding shoulder, the other braced against the wall, leaving red smears on the concrete. We reached the ground floor. Gray daylight leaked through broken windows, turning the dust in the air into floating ash. Victor paused at the big roll-up door, listening. Outside, only birds and dripping trees. He turned to me, voice almost conversational. Call your wife. Tell her to drive the truck to the loading dock. Slowly. If I see brake lights flash twice, I'll know she's trying to run. Then Jake gets the first bullet. I pulled out my phone with fingers that didn't feel like mine. 1 bar of signal. I dialed Laura. She picked up on the first ring. Tom, her voice cracked with terror and hope. Baby, listen carefully. Start the truck. Drive to the big door at the back of the mill. Nice and slow. Everything's going to be okay. I prayed she heard the lie in my voice and understood it anyway. 30 endless seconds later, the old truck rolled into view, tires crunching on gravel. Laura behind the wheel, Jake beside her, both pale as ghosts. Victor smiled, thin and satisfied. Family reunion. How touching. He motioned Ethan forward. You ride in the bed. Pressure on that wound. Try anything heroic and the boy takes your place. Ethan climbed in painfully, laid on his back, staring up at the sky. Blood pooled beneath him. Victor opened the passenger door, gestured with the gun. Laura, out. You ride with me. Thomas drives. Jake stays with Cole. Insurance. Laura's eyes met mine across the hood, pure panic. I gave the tiniest shake of my head. Trust me. She stepped down. Victor slid in beside Jake, gun resting casually on his thigh, barrel pointed at my son's ribs. I took the driver's seat. The keys were still in the ignition. Caldwell's remote starter hadn't been disabled. Victor didn't know that. Drive, he said. County Road 12 miles north. There's a private airstrip. Marcus wants to say goodbye in person before he dies. Sentimental old bastard. I turned the key. The engine coughed, caught. I eased forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan shift slightly, Press something small and black against the truck bed while a second phone. His eyes found mine in the mirror and flicked once toward the glove box. I knew what was inside. I'd seen Caldwell slip it there when she hotwired the truck. A tiny FBI tracker and a panic button. My hand drifted to the wheel, then casually down to the latch. Victor noticed nothing. He was watching the trees like he expected snipers. We rolled past the mill's faded sign, Red Lumber EST, 1947. The letters were almost gone, just like everything else. 1 mile, 2. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Pull over. I eased onto the shoulder. He read the message again, face tightening. Caldwell's team just raided Marcus's hospital room. He's under federal custody. Dying or not, he's talking. Victor looked at me, really looked, for the first time. Something cold settled behind his eyes. Change of plans, he said softly. No airstrip. We do it here. He raised the gun toward Jake's head. My hand hit the panic button. Nothing happened for 1 eternal second. Then the world exploded with sound sirens, rotors, tires, screaming. 3 black SUVs roared from the tree line, blocking the road front and back. A helicopter thumped overhead, searchlight pinning us like insects. Victor's window shattered inward. A gloved hand ripped the gun from his grip. FBI? Drop a T? Laura screamed. Jake ducked. Ethan rolled off the truck bed and disappeared into the chaos. Doors flew open. Agents swarmed. And in the middle of it all, Special Agent Sarah Caldwell walked straight to my window, raincoat flapping like a cape. She looked past me to Victor, now face down on the asphalt, cuffs snapping shut. Victor Langford, she said, voice like winter, you're under arrest for the murder of Daniel James Reed and about 30 other felonies. We'll read you later. Then she looked at me, softer. Your brother's death is finally going to mean something, Thomas. I promised him that 20 years ago. She reached through the window and squeezed my shoulder. It's over. But as they dragged Victor away, he twisted just enough to meet my eyes. And he smiled. Because men like him always have one last card. The sirens are still ringing in my ears. Victor is in cuffs. Marcus is in federal custody, and Caldwell says it's over. But that smile. Something's wrong. What did Victor just realize that I haven't? The helicopter lifted away, taking Victor Langford into the gray sky. Agents swarmed the truck, wrapping Jake in a blanket, guiding Laura into a warm SUV, checking Ethan's shoulder while he waved them off like it was nothing. Caldwell stood beside me, radio crackling with updates. Marcus Langford is singing, she said. Names, dates, offshore accounts. 20 years of corruption coming down in one morning. Daniel's evidence was the key we needed. You did it, Thomas? I should have felt relief. Instead, Victor's last smile gnawed at me like a splinter under the skin. Ethan limped over, bandaged now, face pale, but steady. He followed my gaze to the empty sky, where the helicopter had vanished. He smiled because he knows the charges won't stick, Ethan said quietly. Marcus's terminal days, maybe hours. He'll take every secret to the grave with him. Victor walks on a technicality the moment his brother stops breathing. Caldwell's radio crackled again. She listened, face hardening. Confirm that, she barked. Then to us. Marcus just flatlined. Doctors are trying to revive him. If he dies, before signing the full confession, everything we just risked becomes smoke. Ethan met my eyes. There's a failsafe. Daniel knew this day might come. He hid one last piece, something that survives even if Marcus dies. He reached into his pocket and produced the tiny silver flash drive he'd shown Victor in the basement. The one he claimed was a bluff. It wasn't a bluff, he whispered. It's a video. Daniel recorded it the night he tried to run. He knew they were closing in. He mailed the only copy to someone he trusted more than the FBI, more than anyone. My heart stuttered. Who? Ethan looked almost sorry. Your wife? Laura? My Laura? She'd been my rock for 18 years. We met 2 years after Daniel disappeared. She couldn't possibly. Ethan, read my face. Daniel contacted her 6 months before he died. She was a junior reporter then, investigating mill closures. He fed her pieces anonymously, trying to build a story that would expose Langford without dragging you into it. When he realized he wouldn't make it, he sent her the video with instructions, only open if both Langford brothers were dead or in custody. Laura walked over then, wrapped in an FBI jacket, eyes red from crying. She heard the last part. I never opened it, she said, voice trembling. I swore to Daniel I'd keep it safe until it was needed. I thought that day would never come. I buried it in the backyard the week we got married, under the lilac bush we planted for our first anniversary. Caldwell's eyes widened. You have an untainted confession from the victim himself? Laura nodded, on an old mini DV tape. Daniel's face, his voice, every detail. He ends it by saying, if you're watching this, I'm already gone. Tell my brother I love him, and tell him I'm finally free. The air left my lungs. All these years, the woman I loved had carried my brother's last words like a secret heartbeat. Caldwell was already on the radio. I need an evidence team to the Reed residence. North corner under the lilac. Priority 1. Laura reached for my hand. I wanted to tell you 1,000 times, but Daniel made me promise if I ever told you before it was safe, they'd come for you and Jake. I chose to protect our family. I pulled her close, tears burning. You did protect us. Ethan watched us, something gentle breaking across his scarred face. Daniel got his wish, he said. The truth lives. And Victor's smile just turned to dust. Far away, a second helicopter changed, course heading for our house. For the lilac bush, for the final piece that would bury the Langford Empire forever. But as we stood there, something cold settled in my chest. Because Daniel's last message wasn't just a confession. It was a goodbye. And I never got to say it back. The tape that can destroy everything is buried under our lilac bush. Laura kept Daniel's dying secret for 18 years. But when we dig it up, will we finally get justice? Or will we uncover one last betrayal no one saw coming? They dug gently, like archaeologists afraid to break history. 2 agents in windbreakers knelt under the lilac bush while Laura stood beside me. Fingers laced so tightly through mine I lost feeling in my hand. Jake watched from the porch, blanket around his shoulders, eyes huge. A small metal box emerged from the wet earth, the kind that once held fishing lures. Rust had eaten the edges, but the latch still worked. Caldwell opened it with gloved hands. Inside, 1 mini DV tape in a plastic case and a single folded sheet of paper, yellowed but intact. Laura's breath caught. That's Daniel's handwriting. Caldwell unfolded the note carefully and read aloud. Laura, if this box is opened, I'm gone and Marcus is finally cornered. Play the tape for the world. Inside, 1 mini DV tape in a plastic case and a single folded sheet of paper, yellowed but intact. Laura's breath caught. That's Daniel's handwriting. Caldwell unfolded the note carefully and read aloud. Laura, if this box is opened, I'm gone and Marcus is finally cornered. Play the tape for the world. Then give the second half of this letter to Tommy. He deserves to hear it from me, not from lawyers or headlines. Thank you for keeping my family safe when I couldn't. Daniel. Caldwell handed me the bottom half of the page that had been folded underneath. My name was written on it in the same hurried script. I walked to the edge of the yard so the others wouldn't see me break. Tommy, by now you hate me. Or you miss me. Or both. I deserve it. I was weak. I thought taking Langford's deal would protect you and Mom and Dad. It only gave them 20 more years to hurt people. I tried to fix it and I failed. But you didn't fail. You raised a son. You loved a woman who was brave enough to carry my secret. You stayed the good man I never managed to be. Live the rest of your life loud and happy and unafraid. That's the only apology I have left. If there's anything after this, I'll be watching Jake grow up. Tell him his uncle was a coward who finally did one thing right. I love you, big brother. Always have, D. The paper shook so hard in my hands I had to sit on the wet grass. Laura knelt behind me, arms around my shoulders, crying into my neck. Jake came and sat on my other side without a word, just rested his head against my arm like he did when he was 5. Across the yard, an agent slotted the tape into a portable player. The screen flickered to life. Daniel's face filled it, gaunt, bruised, sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room. Behind him, the date stamp read October 12, 2005, 2 days before he officially died. He looked straight into the lens. My name is Daniel James Reed. What you're about to hear is my voluntary statement. He spoke for 23 minutes. Names, dates, account numbers, threats. How Marcus Langford cooked the books. How Victor handled the Bodies. How an entire county was bought and sold while we grieved a ghost. When it ended, the yard was silent except for the wind in the lilac branches. Caldwell closed the player. This is airtight. Marcus died 20 minutes ago. Victor's lawyers are already screaming, but this tape just buried them both. She looked at me with something close to reverence. Your brother reached out of the grave and finished what he started. It's over, Thomas. Really over. Reporters were already gathering at the end of the street. Phones rang off the hook. The story was breaking nationwide. Local man's lost brother exposes decades-long corruption from beyond the grave. But I barely heard any of it. Because Ethan Cole was walking across the lawn toward us, shoulder bandaged. Carrying a small wooden box, I recognized Dad's old cigar box from the attic. He stopped in front of me. One last thing, he said softly. Daniel asked me, if this day ever came, to give you this. He opened the lid. Inside lay the one thing I thought was lost forever. Daniel's old mill keychain, the one shaped like a tiny lumber saw. He'd worn it every day since he was 16. It was supposed to be buried with him, or so I thought. Engraved on the back, new letters scratched deep. I never left you. I just went ahead to clear the path. Ethan's voice was rough. He carried it until the night he knew he wouldn't make it home. Said to tell you the path is clear now. I closed my fist around the keychain until the metal bit into my palm. And for the first time in 20 years, I smiled through the tears, because my little brother had finally come home. The tape is public. The Langfords are finished. My brother's last words are echoing around the world. But the wooden box in Ethan's hand still has something inside it that Daniel meant only for me, and I haven't opened it yet. Ethan didn't hand me the cigar box right away. He held it between us like it weighed 1,000 pounds. There's another envelope inside, he said, voice low enough that only Laura, Jake, and I could hear. Daniel wrote it the same night he recorded the confession. He told me, only give this to Tommy if he's strong enough to read it after everything falls. He looked at me, scarred face unreadable. Are you strong enough? I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Laura took Jake's hand. We'll be on the porch, she whispered, giving me the space I didn't want, but knew I needed. Ethan passed me the box. The lid creaked. The tiny saw keychain sat on top, glinting. Beneath it, a single white envelope, thick, sealed with the same circled millwheel wax I'd seen in the safe. My name was written in Daniel's adult handwriting, not the hurried scrawl of a man running for his life, but slow, deliberate, like he'd had all the time in the world. I broke the seal. Inside were 3 things. 1. A letter, 4 pages. 2. A photograph I'd never seen before. 3. A savings account, passbook, in Jake's name. I started with the letter. Tommy, if you're reading this, the monsters are dead or in cages, and you're still standing. Good. That's the first miracle. Now comes the second. I didn't just disappear to protect you from Langford. I disappeared because I found out something that would have destroyed you if I stayed. Look at the photograph. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. It was a hospital photo, grainy, taken with a cheap disposable camera. A newborn wrapped in a blue blanket, eyes scrunched shut, tiny fist against his cheek. On the back, in Daniel's writing, Jacob Daniel read, Born March 14th, 2005. 7 pounds to Oz. He has your nose, big brother. The date hit me like a freight train. 9 months before Jake was born, Daniel had still been in Evergreen. He'd vanished in October. Jake came in March. I couldn't breathe. Daniel's letter continued. I met Laura in February 2005. One night. One stupid, drunk, terrified night when I thought I was already a dead man walking. She never knew my real name. I left before sunrise. 9 months later she married you. You gave that boy the life I never could. He is yours in every way that matters, Tommy. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every Christmas morning, that's you. That's the father he knows and loves. But he is also mine. I never wanted you to carry this. I wanted you to live clean. If you hate me now, burn this letter and keep living clean. If you can forgive a coward one last time, tell him when he's old enough that his uncle loved him enough to let him go. Either way, the account below is for his college, his wedding, his life. Use it or don't. Just know I watched from a distance every chance I got. I saw his first steps on a library security feed. I stood in the back of his kindergarten graduation wearing a janitor's uniform. I cried like a baby both times. You raised my son into a better man than I ever was. Thank you for that gift. I'm sorry I couldn't be the brother you deserved, but I gotta be the guardian angel who cleared the path. Be happy, Tommy. You earned it. Love, always. Daniel. The passbook showed deposits every March 14th, Jake's birthday, for 17 years. Never large amounts, never traceable. Enough to pay for any college he wanted, twice over. I sat on the wet ground under the lilac and cried like I hadn't since the night he disappeared. Not from pain this time, from the weight of a love so fierce it crossed 20 years of silence to make sure my son or son would never want for anything. Laura found me there. She read the letter without a word, tears streaming. Then she knelt, wrapped her arms around me, and whispered the only thing that needed saying. He's always been ours, Tom. Nothing changes that. Jake walked over, curious, worried. I pulled him down between us, held him tight, and felt Daniel's heartbeat in my son's chest. The monsters were gone. The secrets were out. And the path, just like Daniel promised, was finally clear. My brother didn't just save us from Langford. He gave me the greatest gift and the heaviest truth I'll ever carry. Jake is my son, and Daniel's. Now we decide what that means for the rest of our lives. The lilac petals were falling like slow snow. Jake sat on the porch steps between Laura and me, the letter folded small in my fist. He hadn't read it yet. I couldn't find the words to hand it over. Laura broke the silence first. He needs to hear it from you, Tom, not from paper. Jake looked up, eyes flicking between us. Hear what? I opened my mouth 3 times before sound came out. Jake, the man you've heard about your whole life, Uncle Daniel. He wasn't just my brother. I told him everything. Not the ugly parts. Those would come later, when he was older. I told him about a scared 25-year-old who made impossible choices, who loved a baby he never got to hold, who watched from the shadows and sent birthday money every year without ever signing the card. When I finished, the backyard was quiet except for the wind. Jake stared at the grass for a long time. Then he looked at me, eyes shining but steady. So? I have 2 dads? My heart cracked clean open. You have one dad who tucked you in every night, who coached your little league, who cried at your school plays. That's me, always will be. He nodded slowly, then turned to Laura. And Mom, you knew? I knew there was a man who needed protecting, she said softly, and that the best way to protect him was to love you out loud every single day. Jake unfolded himself from the step, walked over to the lilac bush, and picked up the small metal box the tape had come in. He turned it over in his hands, like he was feeling its weight. I wish I could have met him, he said finally. Ethan, who had been standing quietly by the fence, spoke for the first time. You kind of did. He stepped forward and placed something in Jake's palm. A worn baseball, scuffed and grass-stained. Summer of 2009. You were 4. Public park 3 towns over. I was there watching, like always. You hit your first T-ball home run, tripped over the base, and started crying because you thought you were out. A guy in a gray hoodie picked you up, dusted you off, told you falling just means you swung hard. Then he disappeared before anyone got a good look. Jake stared at the ball. In faded Sharpie, almost invisible now, were the words, "Swing hard, kid, Uncle D." Jake's shoulders began to shake. Not big sobs. Quiet, like the world was too heavy to cry aloud. I pulled him into my chest and felt Laura's arms come around both of us. Ethan gave us space, walking back toward the agents wrapping up their work. Before he left, he looked over his shoulder. Daniel's last request to me was simple, he said. Make sure they get to be happy without looking over their shoulders. I'm done wearing his face. Tomorrow I disappear for good. New name, new life. Debt paid. He gave a small salute, the closest thing to a smile I'd ever seen on him, and walked away. That night we did something we hadn't done in 20 years. We cooked dinner together. Real dinner. Laura's lasagna, the one that takes 3 hours. Jake set the table with the good plates we saved for holidays. I opened the bottle of red we'd been saving for some day. Halfway through the meal, Jake raised his glass of root beer. To Dad, he said, looking at me. Then he lifted it higher. And to Uncle Daniel. For clearing the path. We clinked glasses. The sound was small, ordinary, perfect. Later, when the house was quiet, I went to the backyard alone. The agents had filled the hole under the lilac, but I knelt anyway and pressed the little saw keychain into the fresh dirt. Thank you, I whispered to the dark. For the son I got to raise. For the brother I got to forgive. A breeze moved through the branches, scattering petals across the grass like tiny goodbyes. And for the first time since that October morning 20 years ago, I slept without dreaming of ghosts. The table is set for 3 again, but this time the 4th place is filled with peace. The monsters are gone. The truth is out. And tomorrow we start living the life Daniel bought for us with 20 silent years. The sun came up soft and gold, the way it used to when we were kids and Mom would open the curtains and sing off-key to wake us. I stood at the kitchen window watching it spill across the backyard, turning the lilac petals into scattered coins of light. Laura patted in behind me, arms sliding around my waist, chin on my shoulder. "Coffee's on," she murmured. "Jake's still asleep. First time in 3 days." We stayed like that, quiet, breathing together. No sirens, no unknown numbers buzzing, just the hum of the fridge and birds arguing outside. The doorbell rang, gentle, not the frantic pounding of the last week. Through the peephole I saw Agent Caldwell, alone, holding a small cardboard box and a thick envelope. She smiled when I opened the door, an actual smile, tired but real. "Official business," she said, "and one unofficial thing." She handed me the envelope first. U.S. Treasury seal. Inside, paperwork returning the family land, the mill site, the trust. Everything the Langfords had tried to steal. Clean title, no liens. "Victor took a plea this morning," she said. "Life, no parole. The estate is yours again. Do whatever you want with it. Tear it down, rebuild it, plant wildflowers. It's yours." I couldn't speak. She understood. Then she gave me the cardboard box. Light. Something shifted inside. "Ethan Cole mailed this from somewhere I'm not allowed to know. Said to deliver it after the dust settled." I opened it in the living room. Laura sat beside me, hand on my knee. Inside, a brand new mini DV tape labeled, "For Jake, open on his 18th birthday," and a second item wrapped in brown paper. I unwrapped it carefully. It was the twin to Daniel's old mill keychain, the tiny lumber saw. Only this one was shiny, brand new, and on the back was engraved, "To my son. Your dad raised you. I just loved you from a distance. Swing hard. Daniel," underneath, in smaller letters Ethan had added. He had this made the week before he died. Kept it in his pocket every day after. Now it's home. Laura's tears fell onto the metal, warm and quiet. Caldwell stood. "That's everything. My card's in the envelope if you ever need anything. Otherwise, live well. That's the best thank you Daniel could have." She left as quietly as she came. Jake appeared in the doorway, hair wild, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Was someone here?" I held up the new keychain. "A delivery from your uncle?" He walked over slowly, took it, read the engraving. His face did something complicated. 16 years old, trying to hold a lifetime of feelings. He slipped the chain over his neck, right next to Mom's wedding ring he still wore from the night we ran. "Dad," he said, voice steady, "can we go to the mill today? Just us?" Laura and I looked at each other. We knew what he was asking. We drove out an hour later. The gates were gone, crime scene tape already down. We parked where the office used to be and walked the overgrown yard until we found the exact spot from the childhood photo. Me and Daniel grinning like idiots. Jake stood there a long time, keychain clutched in his fist. Then he knelt, dug a small hole with his hands, and pressed something into the earth. The old baseball from his first home run, the one Daniel had signed. When he stood, he wasn't crying anymore. "This is where it ends," he said, "and where it starts." He reached for my hand. Laura took the other. We stood in a circle, 3 of us, holding the space where the 4th had always been. And for the first time in 20 years, The mill didn't feel haunted. It felt finished. The land is ours again. The keychains are together. The boy who carried two fathers in his blood just buried the past and chose his future. 2 parts left. One for revenge that never needed to be taken. One for the life we finally get to live. We never had to lift a finger. That was the strangest part. Victor Langford spent his first week in federal prison screaming that the evidence was fabricated, that Daniel's tape was deep-fake garbage, that he'd be out by Christmas. Then the other inmates found out what he'd done to a 25-year-old kid who just wanted to do the right thing. They found out about the brake lines on our parents' car, about the pension money stolen from widows. Victor was moved to protective custody the same day he arrived with a broken jaw and 2 missing teeth. The guards looked the other way. Paperwork called it inmate altercation. Everyone else called it Tuesday. Marcus died alone in a secure hospital ward, tubes in his arms, monitors flatlining while a U.S. Marshal stood outside the door. The last thing he saw was a television screen playing Daniel's confession on loop, courtesy of an anonymous nurse who believed in justice more than protocol. Their empire crumbled in weeks. Properties seized, shell companies exposed, politicians who'd taken their money suddenly couldn't remember their own names. A class action suit from the mill workers' families paid out more money than any of us knew existed. The revenge happened without us. It was quiet, inevitable, and final. One afternoon in early spring, a letter came addressed to Jake in handwriting he now knew by heart. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Victor Langford in an orange jumpsuit, sitting alone in a prison day room, staring at a wall-mounted TV that showed the same childhood picture of me and Daniel that had started everything. On the back, Ethan had written, "He sees this every day now. Daniel's face. Your face. He'll see it for the rest of his life. Some sentences are longer than life." That was all. We never heard from Ethan Cole again. Some debts get paid in silence. The mill land became something else that summer. Jake designed it himself. A community park with a little league field, a walking trail, and a simple wooden sign at the entrance carved with the Reed family crest, the circled mill wheel, and one line. For those who cleared the path, and those who get to walk it free. Opening day was sunny and loud with kids. Jake pitched the ceremonial first inning, wound up, and threw a perfect strike. The crack of the bat echoed across the field like a gunshot in reverse. Something broken finally made whole. Laura and I sat in the bleachers holding hands, watching our son run the bases with a grin so bright it hurt to look at. When he rounded third, he tapped the new keychain hanging at his neck, the one Daniel had carried until the end, and pointed straight at us. The crowd cheered, but I heard only one voice in my head, soft and steady, the way it used to sound when we were boys racing bikes down the old mill road. "Swing hard, kid." That night we ate on the back porch, fireflies blinking like slow applause. Jake raised his glass again, same as that first dinner after the storm. "To Dad," he said, looking at me. "To Mom," looking at Laura. And to Uncle Daniel, who never really left. We clinked. The sound was ordinary and perfect. Later, when the house was dark and the crickets sang, I stepped outside one last time. The lilac was in full bloom, heavy with scent. I pressed my hand to the earth where 2 small treasures now rested, an old baseball and a tiny saw keychain. Somewhere in the dark, a breeze moved the branches, and for just a second I swear I felt a hand on my shoulder, light, familiar, gone before I could turn. "Thank you, little brother." The path was clear, and we were finally walking it. One part left. The final morning. The life we get to keep. 25 years after the night Daniel disappeared, I woke before sunrise on an ordinary Tuesday in June. The house was quiet in the way only old houses know how to be quiet. Floorboards that remember every footstep, windows that have seen every season, walls that finally stopped holding their breath. Laura slept beside me, silver now threading her hair, the same soft breathing she's had since the night we married. Down the hall, Jake's old room stood empty. He's 21 today, asleep in a dorm 3 states away, chasing a journalism degree because someone has to keep telling the truth. I slipped out of bed, pulled on jeans and the faded reed lumber hoodie I still can't throw away, and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The coffee pot gurgled like it has every morning for 2 decades. I took the first mug out to the back porch. The lilac bush had grown huge. Its roots cradled everything we buried beneath it. A baseball, 2 keychains, a lifetime of letters we never needed to write again. I sat on the top step and watched the sky turn from charcoal to rose to gold. At 6:12 a.m., exactly the minute Daniel used to burst into my room yelling, "Wake up, old man." When we were teenagers, my phone buzzed on the railing. A text from an unknown number. 1 line. "Happy birthday to our boy. Tell him his uncle is proud. Path's still clear." I smiled so wide it hurt. I knew who it was. I didn't reply. Some conversations are finished in silence. Laura came out, wrapped in my old flannel, took the mug from my hand, drank half, and gave it back without a word. We sat shoulder to shoulder, the way we have every sunrise since the storm ended. A car turned onto our street, slow, familiar. Jake's beat-up truck, the same one we escaped in, rebuilt by his own hands, pulled into the driveway. He climbed out with a duffel over one shoulder and that crooked grin that is half me, half Daniel, and wholly his own. Surprise, he laughed when we both stood there, stunned. Told my professors I had a family emergency. Turns out turning 21 only happens once. He dropped the duffel, walked straight to us, and wrapped us both in a hug that smelled like road dust and coffee and home. Over his shoulder I saw the new sign he'd bolted to the porch post sometime before dawn. Red House EST, the day we stopped running. Still standing. We drank coffee, burned the pancakes on purpose because that's tradition now, and laughed until our sides hurt. Later, when the sun was high and the lilac scent was thick enough to taste, Jake knelt by the bush and pressed his palm to the earth, the way he's done every birthday since he was 16. "Hey, Uncle Daniel," he said, voice steady and grown. "I brought you a new headline." He pulled a folded newspaper page from his pocket and laid it on the ground like flowers. Front page of the Portland Herald. 25 years later. The Daniel Reed Memorial Newsroom. Dedicated at Evergreen University. Truth is the only inheritance worth leaving. Under the headline was a photo of Jake cutting the ribbon, the twin keychains shining at his neck. He stood, brushed dirt from his knees, and looked at me with eyes that had seen every corner of this story and chosen light anyway. "Path's still clear, Dad." I pulled him close, felt Laura's hand find mine, and for one perfect moment, the 4 of us were together. The brother who cleared the way, the father who walked it, the mother who held it steady, and the son who will keep it open for whoever comes next. That is the end of the story. Not because nothing else will ever happen. Life is long and messy and beautiful, but because every morning from now on is the same ordinary miracle. We wake up. We choose love. We walk the path that was cleared for us at a price we will never stop honoring. And somewhere, in the rustle of lilac leaves, or the crack of a bat on a summer evening, or the quiet 6:12 a.m. text that still comes every June 14th, Daniel is right here, smiling. The monsters are gone, the truth won, and the Reeds, all 4 of us finally, truly, get to go home. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this story touched your soul, subscribe this channel and remember, sometimes the ghosts who love us most are the ones who had to leave first so we could live free.